Hi, I'm here with Bender,
And I'm here with Sydney.
and together we are
BS Astrology.
What's Up, Homies?
Let's get into it.
So, we are going to talk about the weekly astrology starting on January 20th, Monday through Sunday. Hopefully, in a format that will be digestible for people if they're just trying to figure out what's going on with the week and like how to kind of move forward with the energy that's going on. So, as we go through, we will do some of the degree stuff. So if you're familiar with your chart, you can kind of look at where this is happening for you.
Mhm.
And if you have greater questions around some of the aspects that are happening and forming, you have some intuitive hits that you want to talk to somebody, we got you.
Mhm.
We're both taking
Yeah.
clients. We're both open for readings. So just reach out. We have an end card that has our contact information, and it's also in our respective bios
Yeah.
as well.
So
I think that was housekeeping,
yeah,
right?
I think we got it all.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
We're trying out a couple of different formats here because we're two Mercurials who just
Me
are
too.
we just have to. We gotta play with different ideas, we gotta tweak it.
But we're
So
always going to talk about astrology. So
yeah.
just listen to everything, hang out with us. Hopefully, you'll learn some stuff. We'll keep learning together too.
Yeah.
And so, January 20th, Monday, 12 p.m. chart. We use zero Aries for these. We're not talking about the houses because they don't count when it's a collective sort of energy.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So we're gonna jump right into January 20th. Which is the day after the sun moves into Aquarius.
Yep.
And we are immediately jumping in with a Sun Pluto conjunction
Yep.
on this day. And you were making some really great points about
yeah, when we were talking earlier. So, regardless, that for the next 20 years, the sun and Pluto are going to be meeting. So this is a brand new cycle that is beginning. And the sun, let's just talk about the sun really quick because I think this is important. The sun is kind of like our ego. It is creative identity. It's like the sense of like purpose, like general purpose. And collectively, we're all kind of trying to figure out how to be a part of community, how to be a part of society. There's some sort of maybe exploration around the ideas that we have that would be like the ultimate or the best sort of community.
The utopian ideals.
Yeah, utopianism. And I think we're all finding that our individual ideas of utopia or how things should be, these fixed ideas that we hold, are not what it is and it's not what's happening. And also, there's probably a lot of shifting and changing that we all collectively need to make around these ideals together. And we're going to be grappling with that for like the next 20 years every time the sun comes and meets Pluto, and also while Pluto is in Aquarius in general.
Yeah. So, and just to give you an idea of where that's coming from, like you said, Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for the next 20 years.
Yep.
So this is really a for as far as how it affects you personally, this is definitely like a major lifetime aspect that we're going to experience over the next 20 years. 20 years is roughly a quarter of your lifetime, give or take. So for at about this time of year, like within a couple days, for the next 20 years, we're going to see this Sun Pluto conjunction. We're really just like in the beginning chapters of what the story of the Sun Pluto conjunction has to tell us. And it's a doozy.
It is a doozy. And it's of note that the inauguration was set for January 19th. We're filming this on January 13th, so we have no idea what's going on, just so you know. But we do know that there is something here. There's information in the sky that tells us that this is about power. And this is about our ideals of power need to shift and change, especially when it comes to community. And as the sun comes and meets Pluto, Pluto is asking the sun to change, to transform, to eliminate something. What I love about whenever I see Pluto sun in a natal chart, I always think that there's some sort of oomping, amping up kind of energy. So this is amped. Like Pluto is an amplification, but also like a laser beam.
Mm-hmm.
It's an atomic bomb.
Absolutely.
And so there's something here that's being asked of us we have to reckon with our idea of collective power.
Right.
And maybe it's this idea of we all collectively come to the idea of like power to the people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We all know that is very necessary right now, wherever you kind of are in the spectrum of politics.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because even if I can't imagine anyone who leans on this side is watching this, but if you're a person who leans far right, those Aquarian ideals still apply.
Yeah.
Just kind of more in the sense of everything needs to be homogenized and everybody needs to look the same and behave the same.
Yeah.
And that those kinds of ideals will bring us into the new era. That is not what I believe.
That's not where we're at, but it bears noting that regardless, everybody collectively is grappling with these ideas of like, how do we get everybody together? Whether it is literally forcing people to act and behave as they would want, or what is hopefully happening on the left side of things, where there is an invitation of understanding and working together in order for us to have a world that allows for everybody to fully be themselves in whatever way that they need and to get the things that they need.
Exactly.
To kind of remove the hierarchy.
Exactly. Because it's important to think about with the sun in Aquarius is in detriment. It doesn't have all of its resources.
Yeah.
So that's where this collectivism is coming in with what we're talking about. Whereas the sun typically represents the ego and one's own personal life path. When the sun is in Aquarius, the ego kind of takes a step back, and we're thinking about
the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Exactly. All for one, one for all kind of vibes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit of an uncomfortable place for the sun to be, because while you can still think about how it impacts you personally, what we're talking about, what impacts us personally, is what role we are playing collectively in society.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the Aquarian vibes with the sun. The ego takes a step back, and with Pluto, you're right. It's an atomic bomb, because the sun shines the light on whatever it touches.
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about like major transformation, and transmutation happening like right on its face.
Yeah.
Like you can't avoid it. It's right there.
And Pluto is also about secrets, like
which is hard for the sun shining on it,
right? And so it would be kind of interesting to see if something arises that has to do with like the collective learning about some sort of secret around power and control that like maybe governments have had on it.
Mm-hmm. I think we're already seeing that energy starting to accumulate. Again, I mean, we all are collectively kind of in this awakening period.
Yeah.
Regardless of what side you sit on, I think everybody's kind of in agreement that our government hasn't been trustworthy.
No matter what, it hasn't been showing up for any of us. And so how do we collectively get the government that we've all bought into by being incarnated here in this country, right? We're speaking from an American perspective. Like, how do we get the government to buy into us?
Right.
Because we're bought in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. When you're born in, you're bought in. So, and we should move on to the next day, but that's just a really good kind of overview. This is actually kind of an interesting week to choose to start doing weeks ahead, because this is just definitely like from a US centric perspective, this is a big week. And as we're going to look ahead, we're going to see that there are some kind of contentious, conflict centered aspects happening for the coming week.
Yeah.
And
before we move forward, though, we should briefly touch on the moon Chiron opposition.
Right.
Because the moon has just squared Mercury. So there's some sort of maybe conversation that has happened, some information that we've learned that is not very comfy.
No.
Right. And it likely has to do with relationship. We're trying to find balance and harmony, the moon in Libra, really is trying to find the equilibrium between things, trying to harmonize. It needs to do that. It needs to relate to others.
Right.
And Mercury,
and needs to find the balance. It's about justice.
Yeah.
It's not about taking a side so much as it's trying to find the balance.
Exactly.
And the justice in that.
And that opposition to Chiron is ouch.
Yeah.
It's just hurt feelings. And there's this, it's a T-square, like let's just call it what it is, Moon, Chiron, Mercury T-square. There's some sort of conversation, argument, something that has happened that hurts. It just hurts.
And this could mean personally for you, it could just be, especially with that Aries Libra relational opposition going on, it could just be any of your one-on-one relationships. Again, just bring it back to, this is the day after the inauguration, so maybe there's just a lot of contention with
you learn things about the people that you have in your life. You're like, oh, I did not know that you thought that way, or
whose side are you on,
or you lean that way, or your idea of community is different than mine, and ideologically we don't get along. It's also of note that Venus, the ruler of the moon in Libra, is in Pisces. It's very, this is like the ultimate utopian kind of philosophy, but it delusionally so. It just had its reality check with Saturn. It just was asked to kind of get to brass tacks around its vision for her future, her love life, her relationships, her money and everything, but like something is not working out exactly how she wanted it to. But she's still got to go forward with this new bit of energy and information. So I wanted to make sure that we kind of noted that.
I think that brings us through to the 21st.
All right.
And on the 21st, we're still coming right back into this Pluto energy. We've got the moon has moved into Scorpio now and will be squaring Pluto in Aquarius. And Scorpio is also very transformative energy for sure. It's also, the moon is not comfortable hanging out in Scorpio.
No, it's in its fall.
It's in its fall.
It's cranky to be there. It was... It has fallen from grace.
It doesn't feel like a safe place to feel your feelings. You know?
Very hyper protective. A little guarded. Bit. Very guarded.
Walls up.
Yep.
But it is making a square to that Pluto in Aquarius. While Pluto is still making that conjunction to the sun.
And if we think modernly for a second, so for the most part, we use traditional rulerships, but I do, because I'm like, ooh, Pluto's involved. So let's go modern just for a second. The moon in Scorpio, from a modern perspective, is ruled by that Pluto in Aquarius. And so the moon is squaring its ruler. So there is some sort of conversation that it understands. It's just not comfortable. And it
may even be that it understands it too well, right? Like it's
feeling so very, very deeply about something that it has held, and being asked by Pluto, the bigger, heavier planet, you have to drop something around maybe the protective, that self-protective energy in order to be of better service to the collective, right? Because we all are holding on to, I have to protect myself.
Right. But there are a lot of conversations around that, right? Like as things get bad, there are a lot of conversations around, well, then you just got to figure out how to protect your own.
And is that really working?
Is it working? Because that seems to be kind of the U.S.
It's not
way of thinking, is that individualism and just protecting mine and my own and those who look like me and think like me.
And that's that Chiron and Aries, right? The wounding around individualism, like the wounding that you receive around behaving in this way,
right?
From just saying it's just me and me alone. I don't need all of that, So it's also, the moon is in the path of fire, so it just is so uncomfortable there. Mars is still out of bounds. I think that's important for us to know here too.
Yeah, especially with Mars being in Cancer and still retrograding. So Mars is having a tough time right now. And you have to keep that in mind with Mars, with any of these aspects that it's making, is that Mars is functioning at a deficit at this moment.
And there's just a lot of water in the sky.
A lot of water, a lot of feelings, a lot of intuitive or
almost
psychic energy.
Yeah, psychic
coming
hits
in.
was what I was thinking.
That's what you said earlier. Psychic hits. I like that,
Yeah.
that term. Yeah.
But like, is the psychic hit right? And do you know how to trust it or not?
Exactly.
I think is a bit of
Right.
To go back to a traditional perspective, the moon is ruled by that Mars in Cancer.
Right.
Moon in Scorpio ruled by Mars in Cancer. So regardless, Moon in Scorpio is ruled by a baddie. A baddie that is cranky, going through some stuff.
Going through big changes.
Having to do with home, community, more of like a collective thing, not an individual thing.
And keep in mind, the moon likes to feel safe. Yeah. So going through these major, and that's another reason why Scorpio doesn't always function super great in the moon. And the moon is what keeps us safe and what our habits are.
Yeah.
That kind of keep us on track emotionally.
Yeah.
And Scorpio comes and just jumbles that all up, asks us to change, and the moon is really uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
So definitely on the 21st, we're still on the Tuesday the 21st. There's definitely going to be, I think, and it very well could be a very internal experience for a lot of folks, especially with the moon happening. This is going to be a question of how do I need to change, and what has been keeping me safe, or what have I been trying to hold on to keep me safe that really isn't keeping me as safe as I thought.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the moon is just kind of quiet for the rest of the day. The moon hits Pluto, hits the sun. It has this kind of confrontation. It asks us to go deeper into our feeling process. It asks for us to eliminate something. And then it just kind of floats off and does it.
Gives you time to digest that.
Digest, right? And also to brood.
Yeah. Especially with like Venus still in Pisces, with Mars retrograding. I think that anytime that there is a quiet moment, it's going to be brooding and churning and marinating in something.
There's a complexity here, especially moon in Scorpio really makes things complicated. It really makes things internally dramatic. That now, that because the moon won't be really interacting with much else in a really strong way by Ptolemaic aspect, by square, trine, and opposition or anything, it's just gonna brood. It's a brooding day. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I do too. There's a lot of, like I said, it's a lot of internal. It doesn't mean that it won't feel big, but it might not necessarily be a day where you see a lot of external validation for what you're feeling. It's going to be an internal conversation that you're having with yourself on that day. Might be a good day just to let yourself sift through those feelings.
Yeah. Journal.
Journaling would be a good thing to do on this day.
Or just cry.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of water in the sky. I mean, just kind of cry, but also perhaps don't try to do anything about it. Don't try to fix it.
Don't try to fix it. Be very careful about any conflicts you're entering into at this time. Yeah. You may need that void time to piece through what it is you are feeling before you directly confront it.
You might be feeling a impending conversation starting to build because we have Mercury coming to oppose Mars very closely. Right. It's forming. There's something rumbling here. So we are churning with that moon, and then maybe let's go on to the next day.
Yeah.
So January 22nd, Wednesday.
Yep.
So we still have the moon in Scorpio. It is still feeling stuff.
Yep.
But now it has kind of come back into picture, and it is going to do a fun little trine to Saturn.
So yeah, the moon trine Saturn. No, you said a really good thing earlier.
I mean, this is sad girl vibes.
Yeah,
these are vibes. Water signs. They're not in the happiest of the water signs.
Nope.
Right.
We've got Scorpio and Pisces. Yeah, there's a melancholy vibe to this.
Yeah, but there's an understanding. Maybe there's some sort of. Sometimes when I think of Saturn coming and meeting a planet in like a harmonious trine, it's almost like Saturn does this like boundary lasso. It's like, here, I'm going to bring you back into like a reality and hold you here so you can grapple with what you've actually been processing,
right,
and do what you need to do. Right. It like shows the border. It shows the limit.
I think it's that it can speak to that moment of acceptance, right? Yeah. If you've been like resisting the reality of something, those Saturn trines can really be that moment of
this is what you have to deal with.
This is what you have to deal with, and you can finally be in an emotional place to be like, okay, this is what it is. Now I have to start making the plans to move forward with this reality.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Like, whether it's good or bad, it is what it is.
Yeah. You can try to elect around it. You can try to, change your fate, but sometimes Saturn just has to give you this gentle, like, shh, shh, shh. This is just what it's gonna be.
And it's just a bit of melancholy. I mean, the moon is going to trine Venus as well, which had its meeting with Saturn, so that could bring. It's like it hits Saturn's like, it is what it is, and then it hits Venus and it's like, but it's probably going to turn out okay.
It's okay. Yeah,
it's going to be okay.
And I think it can also kind of show you it's comfort, and you could find kind of what that comfort is. Like, yes, this is your reality, but you also need to look at the good things that come out of this reality.
Moon is still in the path of fire, so just really not feeling super fantastic. Right. But I like the trine to Venus, even though there's really not much being offered in terms of like reception or anything like that. It's just kind of like, well, we'll both be a little sad together.
We'll be a little sad together. It's a good time. I think this is probably the most advantageous day as far as this week goes for kind of gathering your resources and finding some places of comfort, because the next day we are moving into that Mars opposition that you were talking about earlier. So there are still some conflicts that are building up and getting ready to pop off a little bit in the coming days. I'd say on this day, this is probably the best day to kind of like gather your resources, be prepared for what's coming up ahead. We got that Saturn trine where it's like, this is your reality, like get ready for it. But with that moon trine to Venus, Moon and Venus really enjoy each other's company.
They love each other.
And they do. They really do.
Even if it's sad.
Well, and I think that's kind of what's nice for this moon in Scorpio is that Venus is exalted in Pisces. So whatever like icky, cranky feelings Scorpio has.
Honey. Yeah. You can feel that way.
Yeah, exactly.
We can still hang out.
Yeah, exactly. Aw, that's cute. Yeah, it's definitely like Venus swooping in to kind of like comfort a very uncomfortable moon right now. So this is definitely a good time to practice some self-care, kind of get your wits about you to prepare to deal with the rest of the week.
Let's move forward.
Yeah.
Let's go to Thursday. We're going to January 23rd.
Yep.
We still have the moon in Scorpio. Congrats. But will leave Scorpio at the end of the day. But one of the first things that it does earlier in the day is it has this opposition to Uranus. So that's like some sort of insight, right?
Yeah.
It's like some sort of emotional shock almost.
I would say that with the opposition, it's more of a shock than an insight. Like it is an insight, but it is going to be a little bit more of a challenging insight, right?
And it's in a fixed sign, so it definitely doesn't want to be shocked.
Right. It could even be, what I'm getting with this, just with the story that we're building here. Yeah. Let's continue the story of like confronting a conflict with somebody, right?
Yeah.
This could be a thing where you think that you have it figured out. You know exactly what's going on with this person, and you go to confront them and they come to you. It's
completely something different.
Yeah, and they're like, that is not where I have been.
And that's not where I stand. And in fact, it is this.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's preparing for thinking that you've got all your shit figured out and you know exactly what the other person is thinking. And that person is going to come and they're going to give you information that makes you feel like you really need to backtrack and revisit what it is you thought was going on.
And I like that because we have Mars and Venus, they're within 3 degrees, so we can talk about them.
Yeah.
They're in that harmonious trine. So they're, there's some sort of understanding here between the two of them. And those are the rulers of both Uranus and the moon.
Right.
So they're working together, even though this kind of shock happens. So there's something here. I like that.
Yeah. And just to keep in mind, we do have what we were talking about earlier is we still have that, that kind of that overarching story of that Sun Pluto conjunction, talking about this idea of like all this fixed energy with Aquarius, never wanting to admit that you're wrong. This might be a good moment because you're going to get some conflicting information that's trying to tell you that you're wrong. I think it's a really good day to consider that maybe you're wrong. or just considering the energy that that you may not have all the facts and being open to that change, to changing your mind on those.
And Mercury is in plane here too, right? Because Mercury trine Uranus, so that is some sort of insightful conversation or a piece of information that comes through.
Yeah.
The moon had met with Mercury earlier in the day, which is also, again, some sort of being able to talk about what you feel.
Right. Because Mercury is very mutable, right? We're talking about fixed energy with Aquarius and Scorpio. But when you have Mercury coming into play, Mercury kind of demands a lot more flexibility.
Yeah. But in Capricorn, he's going to say, like,
demands flexibility.
But he's also, he's a little bit more sober.
Right.
Mercury in Capricorn is, I'm just going to tell you like it is.
Right.
He's not going to want the flair. It's, it's like almost like one word answers.
Yeah.
But it is exactly the answer. It is not.
You don't have to read into it. You don't have to make guesses like maybe Moon and Scorpio.
Yeah. You don't have to be. It's not a messy.
Believe someone when they tell you something. Believe someone when they tell you something. Like, when someone shows you who or what they are, believe it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of energy.
Yeah. So I think, with Mercury in play here, this does have to do with some sort of conversation, information, a piece of data that kind of comes through that is likely very sobering,
And we're using or at least I think we've both been using kind of the metaphor of like a person that you would be in conflict with.
Yeah.
And it very well could be that, because again, at the beginning of the week, we do see that Chiron moon opposition with Aries and Libra. So it could be a person. But you can also apply this, especially with being in Sun Aquarius season. You could also think about it in terms of your relationship to systems, or it could just be a groups.
Like if you're in a dance troupe, if you're on a board, if you're, whatever that is, it's like you had something, it came up through that instead of just like it be one person. Like Bender telling me something and it shocks me, right? It could be I go to dance class and some piece of information is shared and I'm like, oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. So just to keep in mind, we're not saying that this is going to be
it's
a conflict with a person.
Right. It doesn't have to be your mom. It could be your mom.
Yeah. It could be your mom. Moon and Scorpio, it could be your mom.
It really could be.
It really could be. Could be. Just to clarify that.
And then Moon, after it has this conversation with Uranus and Mercury, is going to trine Neptune. So, it gets back into the dream. It's feeling inspired, perhaps.
Because again, we've got Neptune in Pisces right now.
So Moon, Mercury, Uranus all have this conversation. Then the moon does trine Neptune. And so there is some sort of maybe emotional inspiration, maybe some sort of psychic hit, a desire to kind of maybe, I don't know, think about your dream.
Yeah.
Like the real dream going forward. And with Neptune, with the North Node, it's feeding into that. Whatever we kind of come up with is feeding into the way to go forward in Neptune and Pisces. Neptune and Pisces with the North Node is like about maybe our spiritual vision.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially like having received some shocking or conflicting information, moving forward and building our dreams kind of around that information that we've just received. But yeah, I think that the biggest thing with the Moon Neptune trine, you definitely have some permission to rest in that moment.
Yeah.
And just allow yourself to dreamscape a little bit.
Yeah. And I think if we just think about the moon doing this trine to the north node, so it is feeding the north node. We also have to think about that sextile to the south node, which is like, whatever this is, it's still, there's some sort of invitation here to drop maybe self-criticism, to embrace self-forgiveness.
Exactly.
And to, there's something about forgiveness here and dropping the perfectionism that we might have held about like how we were supposed to behave or perform.
Because South Node in Virgo.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where the perfectionism is coming from. But yeah, it's definitely like a nice release of a permission to release some of that criticism, some of that, maybe that like rigid perfectionism you've kind of been sitting with.
Yeah.
Around what, and actually that actually works really well if you're in a conflict and you've just received
there is probably a conflict. We have Mercury Mars opposition.
Yeah, there's a lot of opposition.
It is strong. It is pretty much it's perfect. It perfects during this day. Right. So there is some sort of argument. Yeah. There's some sort of argument and some sort of shock. Maybe it's actually the shock happens first because the moon hits Uranus, and then this Mars, 2 sextiles with 2 oppositions. Yeah, mixed rectangles. So there's something here. Right. All of these things are feeding into each other. So there is an argument, a conflict, an insight, and inspiration. Right.
And I think it's important to note just the difference between like an opposition versus a square, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely conflict here, but it's conflict where you can find common ground. There's a balance to be struck. It's not necessarily quite like a square where it's just you're putting these like intensely stressful, karmic lessons to be learned. There's a balance to be found. There's validation to be had on both sides. Just to make a point about that with opposition.
Yeah, it's almost like, I see your point. Yeah. And you're like, I see your point. But I'm still really about my point.
Exactly. But and I'm about my point, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Or I'll let you do your point if you let me do my point.
Exactly.
And the thing about oppositions is usually one way weighs out over the other. You have to kind of pick. But I think that there's something here with that rectangle, with that mystic rectangle that will get figured out. Yeah. It actually does resolve in some sort of way, which if it was just any old opposition, you'd be like, maybe not. So I think that's a special day. I don't think it feels good. Bless you.
No.
Bless you, Sneaky.
But sometimes the most significant things don't always feel comfortable in the moment.
Yeah.
Which is why, again, day before, make sure that you're taking care of yourself that day before, because this day, especially with
it's 2 sextiles and 2 trines. Like this is something gets worked out. Something comes up and it gets worked out. It might not feel great. It's not like all of these planets these aren't ones that you feel. It's not like Venus and Jupiter and it's
kind of like finding a compromise, right? And compromises don't always feel great because we want things to go our way, right?
Yeah.
But we're taking a step back from the me and the I and thinking about what is best for all of us.
I'm so fascinated by that day. But let's move forward.
Okay.
Let's go to January 24th. Yep. So Friday, January 24th. Now we have the moon in Sag. Play, fun, like the mood,
exploration.
The mood lightens up. Just immediately lightens up, and maybe a little bit too much because the moon will oppose its ruler, Jupiter. And so that's a little bit too much.
It could be too much. Maybe depending on how things went the day before, maybe a little excess is good that day.
Yeah, maybe it really needs to. Like I need to just let my hair down.
Yep.
I need to go and do something else that isn't stressful because whatever was going on I was feeling some sort of way about it all.
And we're moving into more mutable energy too, right? That's a little bit more receptive and open to change. We've got Sagittarius, moon in Sagittarius. So definitely moving away from that really fixed energy.
Yeah.
Might be a good day. Let yourself explore and feel curious that day, but don't necessarily swing over to that side.
Don't swing too far.
Don't be gluttonous that day. Don't be a hedonist that day, perhaps.
We will be feeling probably frisky, like Moon Jupiter.
I would just say make sure you're not. It is frisky, and that's why it's a good thing to make sure, because you're going to get that reality check the next day. Make sure that you can stand by any choices you make that day.
To be forewarned is to be forearmed, or to be forearmed is whatever.
Yeah, that one.
There's fours.
Yeah,
it's happening. So you know a little bit. You know a little bit about. You do too much, there's a check-in. Right. It's going to happen. It's not going to feel great.
Then that energy is going to be there no matter what. So maybe just decide what you're comfortable going overboard with. Maybe just letting yourself eat that really good piece of cake. Let yourself emotionally eat a little bit, or let yourself go out and explore something new. But just remember that whatever choices you make today, there's kind of it's going to be kind of like an immediate drop of the hammer, right? Like the very next day, whatever choice you made today, tomorrow you're gonna feel the consequences of it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's kind of, for Friday, for Venus's day, right? That's kind of one of the bigger stories for the day is just that Moon Jupiter opposition.
Yeah,
it's just going to kind of pull people forward for the day. I'm feeling. I went through that thing on Thursday.
Yep.
And brush it off. Let's go. This is
it's Friday.
Yeah. It's Friday. Let's blow, and maybe this is when you let your hair down.
Yeah.
And that's great. But the hangover approaches.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of this is otherwise, like you said, it's a little bit of a quiet day, astrologically speaking. Calm before the storm, maybe even. So,
yeah, the moon earlier in the day will make the sextile to the sun. That's great.
Yep.
It's not mad about that. The sextiles is it just feels more exploratory. I think more playful for what it's worth.
Right.
Definitely more in the mind.
Yeah.
Than in the body.
Yep.
That's kind of how I'm taking it with the fire in the air.
Yeah. Thinking of new ideas, maybe just and fire can be tough when there are consequences the very next day, because you just kind of I think there is going to be a pull to just jump into something.
The ideas are flowing. They really are.
Yep. With the other things happening again, we're still kind of in an air of conflict right now. So I would say the biggest thing is let yourself think about these ideas. This would also be a good day just because we've got a Sag Gemini opposition happening. There's going to be a ton of ideas. Maybe after the whatever conflict or surprising information you had, maybe that day your brain is just going to be bubbling up thinking about all of the different information you just received, and it's going to be really, really tempting to just call somebody up and or call somebody up and just bitch about it. Maybe pay attention, make sure the person that you're calling to bitch about it to is in no way related to the other people that you're in conflict with. Because again, immediate hammer down the next day. But definitely just bubbling up of a lot of ideas and being curious and wanting to explore those ideas. These are two mutable signs, so don't get too attached. Be willing to change your mind about things.
Yeah.
But
this is stay flexible.
Yeah.
Don't overdo it.
Be flexy bendy.
Yeah. So that brings us to Saturn's Day. Saturn's Day. That's January 25th. And we still have the moon in Sag. It has moved forward. It is now in its check with Saturn.
Yep.
And also with Venus.
I was going to say that it's that moon square Venus, because we had a nice moon trine Venus 2 days ago, right? Now we're moving into a moon square Venus. So how do those different aspects, how do those play out differently? Now we've got moon and Sag squaring Venus and Pisces, so still two mutable signs.
But it's the moon wants its freedom and Venus wants to absorb. And it's those two things, especially when it comes to relationships, when I think about a moon in Sag, it just needs its freedom.
It just needs freedom. Yeah. It doesn't like being told what to do.
Venus in Pisces, no.
Just wants to become one.
Yeah. So they
want to like lose all boundaries and just mush together.
Yeah. So, in terms of, if we just think about Venus as, relationships, that's not necessarily going to feel as good as we would want it to.
No. I would even say that Venus desperately wants to have this like dreamy ideal about something. And the moon
has a different idea.
The moon, yeah, totally different idea about what that's supposed to be. And Venus is going to get its feelings hurt because of that. Yeah. Especially again, like you said, with the Saturn square, you got Saturn and Venus sitting right on top of each other, and the moon kind of coming in and kind of adding to that story.
Yeah.
So we've got Venus and Saturn in Pisces, right? So again, like we said before, just before this week, there's that Venus-Saturn conjunction. That is kind of like your reality check about what your highest ideals are, kind of like what you dream of. And then you have moon in Sagittarius.
And the moon is going to wake that up, right? So like the moon is somehow going to confront whatever that reality check is when it comes in square Saturn. It's going to wake up the degrees where Venus and Saturn had its conjunction.
Right.
So it's going to go like, hey, but like actually what did you learn? And like what are you going to take in that has to do with like how you want or express your own freedom?
Yeah. And I think what did you learn is really important with moon and Sag, right?
What did you learn?
What did you learn? Because that's what like Sag is all about, learning and that kind of like higher taking in of information.
And the moon will be entering the bends of the nodes. So this is a choice point as well.
Right.
So there's some sort of choice that it needs to make around the freedom that it's asking for, needing.
Right.
Is it going to serve the South Node? And releasing something around self-perfectionism, criticism, or is it going to feed the North Node? Something that's more unifying, spiritual. Yeah. And also the one thing that we can say about these two signs, about Sag and Pisces, is that there is a religious and spiritual bent to these.
And that's kind of the biggest thing that can bring these two signs together is that spirituality, and that I think they both kind of have this optimistic higher ideal that they just express differently, but that optimism can be found in both of them. Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what choice comes up for people.
So if you're confused, if you know what happened with your personal chart during that Venus Saturn conjunction and you still have questions about what that meant for you, this moment, this day is going to give you a lot of information about what that Venus Saturn conjunction may have been trying to tell you. And it's definitely things around freedom and beliefs, and spirituality. All of those things are coming into play. And I think it's interesting. Again, we talked at the beginning, we're talking that this is the week after the inauguration, wherein I'm just trying to like unify all of the points that we're making with Sun in Aquarius. Again, we're thinking about like collectively what we all need. So, and Pisces and Sagittarius, we're talking about like spiritually on a soul level, where are we at with each other, and how are we going to move forward with that? And what are these reality checks telling us? So how would you say this is actually going to like tangibly play out on this day?
I mean, I also think about I'm not a mundane astrologer. We're more like reading into the energy of the chart. But when I think about from a mundane perspective, we have moon representing the people, and it is in a sign that has to do with law, and it has to do with lawyers, and it has to do with the kind of decisions that we make in order to uphold the society. So I wonder, in truth, there's a big concern with truth. So I'm interested to hear or to see what kind of culminates at this point where we all make some choices around what we truly believe in.
Right. And that's actually interesting. When we did our Venus in Pisces episode, we were talking about how that Venus-Saturn conjunction, this is the last one of this. This is like the last Venus-Saturn conjunction in Pisces before Saturn leaves Pisces, right? So this is kind of like...
No, it has one more meeting because Venus goes retrograde, I believe, right?
Does it?
Mm-hmm. Venus goes retrograde when it goes into Aries.
This year.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be this year is the last year that it happened. So we are, that's what
we're in the middle of this story, the Venus Saturn.
We're in the middle of the finale of of that story that Saturn and Venus have been telling. So I think it is interesting making that connection to what you just said about law and what is true. What is truthful, where have we been kind of deluding ourselves versus where does the truth really lie?
I mean, there's so many conversations around what truth is.
Yeah.
And what truth is actually true and whose truth is valid.
It's also becoming very increasingly difficult to know what information to trust, right? It's really getting harder and harder to find where those checks and balances are with what is reliable information.
Yeah.
The internet has become an absolute shit show.
Yeah.
In general.
Well, and if we just think about the ruler of the moon, right, it's still going to be that Jupiter in detriment. So it's not all truths are created equal.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And and that's really important. Not all truths are created equal, right? There's a certain element of this concept of truth that is, what do we as a society collectively agree is truth versus not, versus what is just what is the law of the universe, right? Yeah. Because sometimes those things don't line up, things that we just accept as truth and that we have accepted as truths for years and years and years. There can be kind of a reality check around that.
And there's something about the higher ideals that we're holding, especially emotionally so close to us. And just kind of staring at this chart and noticing that there is a finger of God with the moon. The moon is up there with the finger of God from Uranus and Mars to the moon. So if you look at a yod in a chart, it looks like a pizza slice. It's two quincunxes and a sextile together. So we have Uranus, Mars, sextile, and then moon, Mars, quincunx, moon, Uranus, quincunx. And so there's something here. It's uncomfy. But it really points at this moon, this thing about truth being out there and coming to light in some sort of way. And with the moon entering the bends, we have to make some sort of choice here about what we believe so we can go forward into that North Node in Pisces, to what we really, really believe, what our highest ideals are, our biggest dreams. So yeah, I always notice yods because I have them in my chart. So I'm like, oh, look at that little spicy yod. It's happening. Let's finish this baby up. Let's go to Sunday.
Okay.
The Sun's Day. It is January 26th. And we have the moon in Capricorn. She sobers up. She gets serious.
Sobers the hell up. Yep. She's opposite her home sign of Cancer.
So she's in detriment. She's feeling real sober about things. This week, this 7-day cycle now has her in her sobriety.
Right.
She's trying to get real about things. She's trying to get real stable.
Yep.
And really probably concerned with matters of security because that is what Capricorn is wanting to try to do.
Right.
There's probably some sort of stringentness and
discipline.
Yeah.
There's discipline there. And it's, especially when you think about the order in which the signs go, right? With Sagittarius, you have kind of this freedom and this exploration. Capricorn is now taking all of that information
rein it in,
and is reining it in, and is kind of organizing it, right?
Yeah, there's a corralling that's going on here.
And that's kind of a nice way to end the week, right? Because we got a lot of information this week. And Capricorn is kind of that sobering moment that comes in at the end of the week, especially if you've had a lot of conflict through the week that we saw with some of that, all those oppositions. Having Capricorn there at the end of the week is definitely a time to sit down and really start to make sense of all that information that we did take in over the week, because it was a big week. It's a big week.
It is a big week. And just it being in, Mercury's sign as well. They're both the moon and Mercury, which they do like each other. They both have kind of the same need.
Yep.
They have the same drive to really get down to the bottom of things, the nitty gritty, right?
Yep.
To get real clear, clean and clear. Just whittle it down to the barest of the essential things. It's definitely more stoic.
Yep.
But I love Capricorn placements, so you probably won't ever hear me speak ill of them, hopefully.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Capricorn can also be like a fucking tyrant,
it
can
be
be so free. You're like, bossy, I guess.
Bossy.
Look, I also love Capricorn. We both have all this Virgo crap going on, so of course we see Capricorns and we're hard eyes about it. Which I am. I do love Capricorns, and also just to play devil, just to try to seem a little unbiased here. Capricorn can definitely be a tyrant and can be a little tyrannical, a little bit bossy, very domineering.
Yeah. Okay,
so
fair. But I like.
You're just not going to let this one go.
I like a Capricorn that knows what it wants, when it wants it, can communicate what it needs, and how it's going to get it done. You
sound like a bottom.
Sometimes I am. But I think it's important. This kind of coming to a simple. I often think of Capricorn placements as there's a simplicity here, because Saturn just whittles. It just takes away the shit it does not need there, and it just says this. It's 1p on the plate of of Michelin star, and they're like, you just need to eat this 1p and it'll be everything you need, and you're like, I wanted a whole bite, and they're like, you get one.
You don't need the bite. If you'll just take the bite, you'll see
you'll get 1p and it'll be just right. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's $400.
Yeah.
But
and just to go back, because we were talking about, we were using that same terminology when we were talking about Mercury and Capricorn, right? Like when Mercury and Capricorn communicates, they're communicating very succinctly, and it's always honest, it's always true. And with Capricorn, let's be real, it's always right.
So they give the container. This is a container in which we're working in. These are your boundaries. These are your borders. Let's work within these. And then you go, okay. And then we go, okay. And Mercury and Capricorn gives, here's the contract. Sign on the line after you read everything. Did you read everything? It has little check boxes. Yes, I read this. Yes, I read this. Yes. It's real succinct.
Now what's happening on this day with Mercury and Capricorn is we're also seeing a really nice, sweet sextile to Neptune and Pisces, right? And I love the relationship between Capricorn and Pisces, because I think on its face, if you were just to write down the qualities of Capricorn and Pisces, you're like, no way would they get along. Yeah. Pisces is just out there in dreamland, whereas Capricorn is trying to nail things down.
It's but making your dreams a reality.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying is they sextile, these signs sextile each other.
Make your vision a reality, or the things you're thinking, right? Mercury and Capricorn. And having a higher vision for it.
Pisces has this dream, but Pisces sometimes has trouble getting grounded in that dream. Capricorn can come along and ground it for them. And on the flip side,
hey girl, we're going to go, oh, you wanted that? We got to go to the store. We got to get you what you need.
Exactly. Now on the flip side, Capricorn loves a vision to bring to
this
grounding.
Is a vision board.
Yeah, it absolutely is like a vision board.
This is a vision board.
This is a vision board.
This day. Is a great day to make a vision board.
Mercury in Capricorn sextiling Neptune and Pisces. This is a day to really bring your dreams, put some structure and put some ideas actually on paper.
Yeah, I love it.
because Capricorn is really going to love kind of having those dreams to play with and to work with. And Neptune and Pisces definitely wants that structure. So that's going to be a nice day for that.
Yeah. I
probably won't see, and I think with that Neptune sextile, maybe we won't see that more domineering, maybe tyrannical not. Side of Capricorn.
Well, and also I don't think that we would see the tyrannical side of Capricorn, if only because the ruler of Capricorn is that Saturn in Pisces.
Right. So this is not a time this is probably the right time for us to be waxing poetic about how great Capricorn is.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, in this moment.
So that brings us to the end of our week that we're speaking about. Do you have any thoughts about, I was thinking about like how I would kind of wrap this up in terms of how I was thinking about how these 7 days played out. And for me, there's like almost like a forgiveness arc around whatever conflict comes up. And then also realizing, maybe eliminating some old held beliefs that you had, and then creating a new vision for ourselves, and not necessarily just putting things into the dirt, but like really taking a moment to have the vision, to vision board at the end.
Right.
But you got to go through this journey. There's regardless, there's some sort of collective confrontation and conversation that we have to have in order for us to get to the vision board state.
Right.
And we also, if something comes up, I really love that idea of be prepared to admit that you're wrong, or that what you were holding on to is no longer necessary. Just let it go. Yeah. Let it drop.
Yeah. Let it go.
How about you?
I pretty much agree with everything you're saying. The one thought that came to mind was when you said that there's a forgiveness arc, and there could be. I think there's definitely circumstances where we could see a forgiveness arc.
Yeah.
I guess the first place that I went to, which is great for Aquarius season, is I immediately zoomed back out into the collective and what's going to be going on that week. And we're going to be in the first week of a Trump presidency. So it could be, just a gentle reminder that you don't have to forgive anybody for anything. You never owe anybody your forgiveness. Right. So this could also be a time of
but maybe self-forgiveness.
Self-forgiveness, definitely. And again, like in other circumstances not relating to the presidency, there could be a forgiveness arc. But I think the biggest thing is allowing yourself to take in information and allowing yourself to adjust according to information. And I think we're going to get a lot of information that's going to require you to both adjust and also kind of get real with yourself about, where do I stand with these things? Where do I, like, what is the role that I'm playing in this collectively? And I think by the end of the week with that moon in Capricorn, that's going to be the moment to really sit down and start thinking about, okay, this may have like shifted my path a little bit. Yeah. So what does that new path forward look like?
Yeah.
Is what I see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And in terms of like how you're planning your week, again, we're going to get this like kind of crescendo at the beginning, and we're going to have this quiet moment right around Wednesday, where you should really make sure to kind of like gird your loins and so like maybe do some like protection spells.
Get provisions.
Exactly.
Get provisions.
This is random, but it made me think of the day before the pandemic actually like officially happened and everything shut down. I'm thinking about the Capricorn energy at the end of the week. I remember my Capricorn roommate at the time came to pick me up. Yeah. It was the day before everything shut down, and I got in the car and I was like, this might be real. Should we prepare for this? And my Capricorn roommate was like, I already got you, and showed me the back of the car, and it had all the toilet paper and all of the, like they had gone and spent like hundreds of dollars preparing
to make sure that.
And they picked up like an ounce of weed. So they like had everything all set. So that's just what that made me think of. So Wednesday is the day to like hoard your toilet paper and all that crap. And then the rest of the week, there's going to be more working with a lot of different, or like taking in a lot of information.
Yeah.
So just make sure that, around the middle of the week that you're giving yourself that rest. and time to reflect before you kind of go back into battle with all this information coming in.
The vision remains important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Our highest ideals, just constantly asking ourselves, like, if everything was perfect, what would that look like?
Yeah.
And then, is that realistic? I think we always have to ask ourselves that. But I think it's okay to dream. And I think that North Node in Pisces is just really trying to remind us of that, even though we're going through all these times. It is a time to dream, because we are going to have to somehow get ourselves out of whatever the heck we have gotten ourselves into for the next 20 years, and certainly for the next 4 years. So we need a higher vision, a higher goal, something that is far more unifying than what we've been working with.
Right. We have a responsibility to each other at this moment in time. And it's time to think about, what does that actually mean?
What does that even mean?
What does that even mean?
All right, friends. So I think we are done. I hope that your week goes by without any of this happening. I hope that you just get to wake up, have the best day every day. But just know that if you're looking around and you see a whole bunch of really strange conflict and people having big feelings and some really kind of interesting realizations, like, the planets are planeting.
Yep, they're doing it. If you are going through this week and you're like, well, this just seems like another day in the life for me, take a look at your chart. Maybe you have some of these aspects in your chart natally. Maybe this will just be a really run-of-the-mill week for you.
Yeah.
And if that's what your chart's like, bless you.
Yeah. But. I mean, some people, it really, and that also, we should just hone in a little bit more on that.
Yeah.
So this is collective energy that we're talking about. That's just kind of happening everywhere. However, if you have, a lot of oppositions in your chart, you're probably not going to feel this kind of conflict in the way that other people that do not have oppositions in their chart feel.
This could actually be your moment to shine when everyone else is running around with their hair on fire.
And you're like, oh, I got this. Crack knuckles. Like, let's go. Like, I know how to fight. I'll put my ponytail up right now.
Exactly.
Like, you know what's going on. And if you have a lot of, trines in your chart, the easy flowing day is just going to feel like any other day when a trine happens. Whereas if a person has no trines in their chart, they'll be like, oh my God, wow, today everything went a little bit easier than, so it really does come down.
I love trine days. I feel trine days in a good way.
It really comes down to how your chart manifests and where these things are happening in your chart. So, if an opposition is happening in not an angular place too, you might not feel it as much. It just, everything really comes down and depends on the chart, but it is always, I think, good to kind of know collectively of what's going on, because if I know that, Tuesday is going to be kind of a cranky day for everybody, it might not be shit for me, but I am able to hold space for the people that, like, my friends or family that reach out to me that are like, what is this day? And not from an astrology standpoint, right? Where they're like, hey, astrologer, tell me why this day is shit. But instead they're just like, I'm having a hard time. And I'm like, okay, I know it's not really hitting me, but I know that collectively this is coming up for other people, and being able to really be that space. Right. Because we are supposed to be with each other.
And what better season to think about it in that way than Aquarius season is. Even if your day's not shitty, just remember it's just generally a shitty day.
Even if it's not happening to you, it is happening to you, because it's happening to all of us. So even if you're not feeling it,
that's a good way to. I like this. So if you're having a particularly good day, think about it in terms of what your responsibility is to the collective. If you're having a good day and everyone around you is having a bad day, maybe you need to be the beacon of light that day. Maybe that's your role that day.
You need to be a part of the good day for somebody else. Right. Or the good moment, because you have the things in your tank to be able to pour over and flow over to other people. Right. And so that's, I think, one of the ideas that we need to remember, especially with the North Node in Pisces, right? Is that, like, when our cup flows over, we got to let it spill onto others. Yeah. We got to let it happen. It's because
we got to start sharing resources, y'all.
A lot
that doesn't just mean money.
Emotional, spiritual.
All of them.
All of it.
All of our resources, we have to start sharing them. Yeah. Because we're definitely in a time of resource scarcity for a lot of people. So yeah,
that's a good button.
That's a good
button.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Take care.
Take care of each other.
Peace.
Bye. I like the way we ended that.
Oh my God.
That was nice.
We did it.
We did.